Welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Definitely always ready to dig in.
Well, today we're looking into something that's got everyone talking in the cannabis world.
Yeah.
It's Pam Bondi's nomination for Attorney General and what that could mean for cannabis reform.
Right.
Her history with cannabis is, let's just say,
Okay.
it's sparked some serious debate.
Makes sense.
And we're going to break it all down here.
All right. So it really is fascinating how, Bondi's stance on cannabis has kind of shifted over time, which, obviously leads to a lot of questions about what we can expect from her in this new role, you know?
For sure.
For example, back when she was Florida Attorney General, she was really opposed to legalizing medical marijuana.
Oh, yeah, back in 2014.
Yeah.
She went so far as to, legally challenge
Wow.
those ballot initiatives to legalize it.
Interesting.
She was saying that those would make Florida one of the most lenient states on medical marijuana.
Yeah. And it wasn't even just about legalization overall, right?
Right.
Her office even defended the bans on smokable medical marijuana,
Right.
saying it was about, secondhand smoke concerns.
Almost feels like they're holding on to those old reefer madness stereotypes, doesn't it?
Well, it definitely raises some eyebrows, especially when you think about all the evidence now about the medical benefits.
Yeah.
But, I mean, to be fair, there are arguments on both sides when it comes to smokable versus non-smokable.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Some people want tighter rules on smoking
For sure.
because of potential health risks.
Yeah, that's fair.
So,
And on the topic of regulations,
okay.
Bondi did eventually let Florida use that FDA-approved CBD drug, Epidiolex.
Oh, right.
Some people might see that as progress,
Yeah.
but others say it just shows she favors pharmaceuticals over natural cannabis.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It really highlights how complicated things are with the pharmaceutical companies, and the regulators.
Right.
And how cannabis policy is always changing.
It really makes you think about who benefits most from these different approaches.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's a big question.
It seems like Bondi's stance on cannabis has been anything but, straightforward.
Yeah. For sure.
She fought against it, then allowed some forms of it.
Right.
And now she's got this huge role where she can shape federal policy.
It's true.
It's tough to know what'll happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that uncertainty is exactly why everyone's talking about this nomination so much.
Right.
What's especially interesting is how her views are so different from someone like Matt Gaetz.
Oh, right.
Who Trump was considering for Attorney General at first.
Gaetz has been pretty vocal about supporting cannabis reform, huh?
Oh, yeah. Very much so.
He's even voted for some of those
He has.
Democrat-led cannabis bills.
Which is not typical for a Republican.
Yeah, not at all.
It really shows how many different viewpoints there are, even within the same party.
Yeah, for sure.
The fact that Gaetz supports things like cannabis banking reform shows how much momentum there is to, ease those restrictions and treat cannabis like a normal industry.
It's definitely a big contrast to what Bondi's done before.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of people wonder if she'll try to slow down
I can see why.
federal legalization.
Yeah, it's a real concern.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the cannabis world are worried about that.
Her being involved with Trump's opioid crisis commission is another thing that's got people talking.
Yeah.
They linked marijuana use to more opioid abuse.
Interesting.
Which a lot of people thought that was kind of questionable,
Yeah.
to say the least.
It's a little strange, isn't it? To say that a plant, which is proven to be safe, is the same as these super addictive and dangerous opioids.
Totally.
Feels like they're trying to scare people and discredit cannabis without any real logic.
It really does.
It raises questions about their evidence.
For sure.
And if they had other motives.
Especially since it came from a commission. It was supposed to be dealing with the opioid crisis.
Yeah, which is a serious issue.
Exactly. Yeah.
Also,
it's like we have Bondi, who's been against cannabis, and then Gaetz, who's all for reform.
two very different paths for cannabis policy.
Yeah.
And the impact could be huge.
It could.
But the fight for reform isn't over yet.
No, not at all.
There are tons of people and groups still pushing for change.
Right.
Pushing for policies that make sense.
Yeah.
With how people view cannabis now.
And it's not just about recreational use.
It's not.
There are so many people who need it for medical reasons.
Definitely.
They deserve safe, legal access.
Absolutely.
Without a bunch of obstacles.
It's important.
The medical cannabis movement has really changed how people see it.
Yeah.
It's shown how much it can help people.
It has.
With all sorts of conditions.
People finding relief, improving their lives. It's been huge for pushing reform.
Yeah, and it shows that this isn't just about changing laws.
It's not.
It's about people's lives.
Right.
Their right to decide about their own health.
For sure.
And well-being.
It's about making sure those choices are respected and protected by law.
It's really a fight for personal freedom.
Yeah.
You know, the freedom to make your own choices.
Exactly.
About your body.
Without the government interfering.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It reminds us we got to stay vigilant about personal freedom.
We do.
Especially when it comes to what we put in our own bodies.
For sure.
And that brings me to something I know is important to you.
Okay.
The idea that growing cannabis for personal or spiritual reasons should be a right protected by the First Amendment.
That's a really interesting area. It brings up big questions about how much the government can control and the right to do things that are personal and meaningful.
Exactly.
It goes beyond the legal stuff about cannabis and gets into the philosophy and ethics of how we understand freedom and making our own choices.
All right, let's dive deeper into that because I think this is where things get really interesting.
All right. So, like, the idea of cannabis being almost like a sacrament or a tool for spiritual stuff has been around forever, right? Different cultures, different traditions.
For sure.
And when you tie that to the First Amendment,
right,
which, you know, protects freedom of religion
of course,
and expression, it really makes you think.
It does.
Like, should people be able to grow and use cannabis for their own personal beliefs, even if the law says no?
It's a complicated issue, no doubt.
It is.
But for a lot of folks, I think it comes down to basic personal freedom.
Right.
If the government can tell us what plants we can grow in our own homes, what does that even mean for our freedom?
Exactly. It challenges the whole idea of, like, being able to decide how we live our own lives, especially on our own property.
Right, right.
And then, you know, you add in the history of cannabis prohibition, which a lot of people say was based on racism and discrimination.
For sure.
It just gets even more complex.
It really does. You can't really separate the legal arguments from the social and historical stuff that shaped how we feel about cannabis.
Exactly.
And speaking of, you know, policies and all that, let's get back to Bondi.
Yeah.
And how she might affect reform efforts.
All right.
You mentioned earlier that some industry leaders are trying to be optimistic.
Right.
But there's definitely a lot of worry out there.
Oh, there is. I mean, her history with cannabis is all about opposition and lawsuits. So people who've been working for legalization, they're understandably nervous.
I bet.
They're worried she'll use her position to block progress at the federal level.
Right.
Like make it harder to reschedule cannabis or ease those banking restrictions.
Right.
Or even like grant clemency for past offenses.
Makes sense.
So
it's not just about the industry either.
No, it's not.
People are worried about the social justice side of it, too.
Of course.
We know that the war on drugs has really hurt marginalized communities.
Absolutely.
And some are afraid Bondi's approach could make things worse.
That's a huge point.
Yeah.
When we talk about cannabis policy, we have to talk about the unfairness that's been built into our drug laws for decades.
Yeah.
Reform has to be about equity and fairness.
Absolutely.
The benefits of legalization have to be for everyone.
It's got to be for everyone.
Not just a select few.
Right. It's about fixing those broken systems and making a fairer society for everybody, no matter who they are or how they feel about cannabis.
And acknowledging the harm that's been done, especially to communities of color because of prohibition and unfair enforcement.
We can't forget about the economics either.
Oh, absolutely.
The cannabis industry could create jobs, bring in tax revenue, help communities.
For sure.
But only if the rules actually help it grow.
Right. Not hold it back and keep the black market going.
It's about finding that balance.
It is.
Between, like, responsible regulation and letting the industry thrive.
Yeah.
So it benefits everyone.
Exactly.
Not just the people with connections and money.
Right. Because too many rules can shut out smaller businesses.
Exactly.
Especially those owned by people of color.
Yeah. It's a tough balance to strike.
It is. It takes a lot of thought to make sure the policies don't just repeat the same mistakes of the past. Absolutely. And that's why it's so important. to keep pushing for change.
It is.
And make sure everyone's voice is heard.
Right.
It's not enough to just sit around and hope for the best.
We have to be active. Talk to our elected officials.
Right.
Support the groups fighting for real reform.
Yeah.
And hold those in power accountable.
Exactly.
To make policies that reflect our values.
You're right. It's about taking that skepticism we have about the system and turning it into positive action.
Exactly.
Just sitting back won't get us anywhere.
It won't.
We have to be informed, engaged, and ready to challenge policies that limit our freedom and keep things unfair.
Absolutely. This is about more than just cannabis.
It is.
It's about what kind of society we want.
Yeah.
One that respects freedom, promotes justice, and cares about everyone's well-being. It's about creating a world where cannabis is just another plant. We can grow it, use it, enjoy it.
Without being afraid or discriminated against.
That's the dream, right?
It is.
And it's a dream worth fighting for.
For sure.
Even when things are uncertain.
It is. And it's a dream I think we can achieve.
Yeah.
If we work together, stay informed, and never give up.
Never give up.
So where does all this leave us when we look at the future of cannabis reform?
Well, it's clear that we've got a lot of challenges ahead.
We do.
And we don't know for sure what's going to happen. But one thing's for certain. We can't just, sit back and wait.
We can't. We got to be active.
Stay involved and keep pushing for change.
Yeah. The future of cannabis reform depends on us.
It really does.
And what we do.
It's pretty amazing to see how far this whole movement has come.
Yeah.
From like a fringe issue to something everyone's talking about.
Yeah.
Cannabis has made the whole country think about.
It has.
Personal freedom, social justice, the role of government. It's a big deal. Yeah.
It really shows the power of grassroots activism.
It does.
And people's dedication to fighting for change.
For so long.
Yeah.
It shows that even when things seem impossible,
we
can still make a difference if we work together.
Absolutely.
And demand better.
That's what it all comes down to, right?
It does, huh?
Believing in a better future and doing something about it.
Yeah.
Not just accepting the way things are, but demanding policies that actually reflect what we believe in.
Yeah. It's about having the guts.
It is.
To question authority and speak up.
For sure.
To fight for a world that's more just and fair.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And never giving up on that.
Never give up.
It takes patience, persistence.
Yep.
And believing that we can make things better together.
I believe we can.
I do too.
And I think if we keep at it, stay focused on that shared vision, we can create real change.
Lasting change.
Yeah.
Well, to all of you listening, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Appreciate it.
Into the world of cannabis reform.
It's a wild world.
It is.
But it's an important one.
It is. We hope you learned something.
Yeah.
And that you're feeling motivated to stay involved in this.
Absolutely.
Remember, your voice matters.
It does.
What you do makes a difference.
Keep learning, keep pushing for change.
Stay informed, stay engaged.
Yeah.
Stay hopeful.
And until next time.
Until next time.
Keep diving deep.